As a young trainer, and having worked as an assistant previously, how do you think all-weather racing has changed the last kind of decades, and how do you think it's benefiting or otherwise, young trainers?
Look, it's clearly been. I personally, I think it's a huge benefit to racing. I think there's a line, and I worry about the line being crossed. But the benefits, first of all, are that there is now not so much pressure to get runs into 2-year-olds on the turf and push them too hard, because, as Mr. Gosden has shown over the last few years, you can introduce some very, 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 very good horses on the all-weather, and it just means you can give them that little bit more time to develop without having to wait until the spring to go again. I had Prince of Arran in the finals last year. He won quite a lot of prize money on the all-weather over the winter. So, it's very good in that sense. And I've actually deliberately held back a couple to aim at the races this year. Caroline and I will have another crack again, and a few others. So no, I think it's good, but they have to be really, really, really careful that they don't start doing too much of it. And I don't mean too many fixtures. What I mean is the guy, like us, or not me in particular, but the lads, stable lads, work unbelievably hard, and it's a very, very, very tough job with long hours. It's well documented at the moment that there is a shortage of people coming in to work in racing. And one of the main things that the stable lads don't like is coming back and getting home at midnight, or having to go and work, go racing on a Saturday or a Sunday when they're meant to be having their weekend off. Yeah. And I just really hope that common sense prevails, and that we don't start getting more and more late night racing and more weekend racing, because it's going to hurt us. The crisis surrounding people coming in to work in racing is the biggest problem racing has faced in years. It's bigger than prize money. It's bigger than anything like that. There isn't a yard in Newmarket that would happily come forward and say, I've got enough lads to do the job. And sooner or later, they push it further and further. There is going to be no product, because trainers aren't going to be able to survive. Wages are getting pushed up. Employment is getting less and less. It is a huge, huge, huge issue. And I don't think it's still appreciated quite how dangerous it is at the moment. I think there's a lot of people doing some very good things in racing. Great British Racing. I've sort of really got to know them this year, and I've been really impressed actually with what they were doing. I didn't quite understand what they did before then, but this year I've had quite a lot to do with them, and I think they do a very good job at getting people who wouldn't normally come into contact into racing, getting them to come to the races, getting them to come and have a look at the yards, getting them to come and meet the trainers. And I know that of people who have never owned a racehorse before, who have been put in contact through GBRI and have actually gone into racehorse ownership. So they've done a great job. I think a key thing going forward is going to be syndicates, and I'm delighted to see the BHA doing a big push on syndicates, because that makes it way more affordable. I mentioned a horse called the Bear Fighter, who I've got running next week for the first time. 80% of the syndicate that make him up are under the age of 30. And it is a way to dip your toe in, not spend a vast amount of money, and work out whether racehorse ownership is for you. And hopefully, through him, we're going to have plenty of fun. He looks like quite a decent horse, and we're going to be able to go racing, and they'll enjoy it. And some of them may say, well, I'll go into another syndicate next year. Some of them may even say, off the back of that, I want to buy a horse. So that's really important. I think racing has embraced social media as another key part. Social media is obviously very attractive to a young audience. I think racing has been ahead of the game in that department for a number of years. So I think there's lots of things going on, and obviously a very contentious issue is the bans after racing.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not big fans. Personally, I think that it's a great idea, and I think if you have a band playing after racing and of the 10,000 crowd, 5 come away thinking, God, you know what, the band were great, but I also really love the racing.
Yeah.
I might look into going again or go into a syndicate or something like that. Job done.
Yeah, I agree.
Job done.
And another contentious issue, moving on from that one, is Kempton Park Racecourse. As we've mentioned, it's a track where you've had probably, in terms of volume, your greatest success. It's set to be closed down and replaced just down the road by an all-weather track in Newmarket. It must be bittersweet for you having that possible new track over the winter just down the road, but also losing such a prestigious and successful for you course.
It is a really difficult one, this one, because initially when I heard about it, I was a big fan. And I thought it was a great idea. And I thought that although Kempton is a fantastic, fair, all-weather track, you go there 9 times out of 10 it's empty, apart from the owners and trainers room. I'll add that in. Apart from the owners and trainers room, which is normally always packed. And so initially I thought, cash in. What's the point in having it? We can do it in Newmarket, have the same crowd, take the 200 million. I know they said 100, it ain't going to be 100. It's going to be a hell of a lot more if they get the whole thing. And do it somewhere that's far more convenient to the majority of owners in England, etc., etc. And I still, to an extent, do feel that way. I do feel like it is a golden egg that we should be cashing in on. But there is one thing that every time I look at the picture as a whole that really nags me, and that is that issue of the owners and trainers room being full every time. And the thing is, we have more racing at Kempton than any other track in the country. And it is the most easily accessible for a vast majority of pretty wealthy people. It is in one of the most affluent areas of the country where our owners are going to come from, or do come from. And is therefore moving a track where we have more racing than anywhere else up to Newmarket, where it's a good hour and a half, 2 hours drive. It takes me, when the traffic's bad, 2 hours to get there along around the M25. Is that a really good idea? And are we potentially putting off a lot of owners who love going racing because it's 15, 20 minutes down the road and probably aren't going to travel 2 hours to go?
And just finally, so many all-weather courses to choose from now, from Newcastle, Chelmsford, Wolves, Lingfield, Kempton. As a trainer, how do you choose where you're placing your horses? What goes through your mind in working out? Is it as simple as which race looks like it's going to suit the most, or do you have certain horses for courses, you could say?
I think you definitely have horses for courses. I still think that there is too much of a bias, especially around Lingfield and Wolverhampton. I think if you have an inside draw at those two tracks, you are at a huge advantage. Kempton, not quite such an issue. Newcastle, even less of an issue. Kempton's my track. Yeah. I think it's incredibly fair, 9 times out of 10. And yeah, they get it. It's convenient. And I think 9 times out of 10, best horse wins.